we've been here for 7, 8 years, something like that. And the idea, we kind of treat the whole property as a big, giant bush regen site. Some areas we can do really well at, other areas we can not do so well at. Some areas take a lot of time, some areas take not so much time, like we talked about earlier. So we went through a bit of a prioritisation process when we first came here to try and decide which areas we wanted to do first. It was a cattle grazing property when we came here, and it was managed with a big spray tank of Grazon to spray anything that wasn't grass. So we kind of changed the way we manage the property. The property's changed a lot as well in the last 7 years. Some people say it's got a bit messy. Some people say it's pretty amazing. But we're seeing pretty awesome biodiversity return to the property, even though we've got plenty of weeds. So here's a really good example. If you turn around and have a look in that forest there, we've got some camphor regrowth, 6, 7, 8 metres. That's exactly the age that we've been here. So prior to us arriving here, somebody would have come through there and just sprayed it all out with Grazon, and the giant paspalum, which is this grass here, would have persisted through the whole property. Really great for cattle, not so great for biodiversity, not so great for natural recruitment of good native species. When you look over here, here's an area that we've actually spent a whole heap of time in controlling the camphor laurels. So this area over here and that area on there on the bank, it all looked exactly the same as what it was behind you. Where we're standing here was like a big closed sort of forest, basically covered by camphor laurel. And the idea was we want to return these back to some of these sort of drier, more open forest types. So we'd love to see native grasses persist back in here, some of which already is. We've got some basket grass returning. And we really, in order to have good quality habitat of that type, we really had to open it up. And so as soon as we get the camphor laurel move in, we get more of the rainforest species move in, and we change the vegetation type that exists in the area. So this area in particular, throughout a lot of the areas of the property, we've done different management actions, but certainly we sort of manage this primarily as a drier open community. So koalas are going to benefit, a whole bunch of other fauna species probably benefit as well. But it's really important to try and retain those different vegetation types. So we're pretty lucky here. We've got those different areas. We've got lowland flats that we're going to walk through in a minute. We've got these drier ridge lines. We've got sort of rainforest gullies. So for us, it was really important to retain all those different types. I mean, not just have like dense rainforest start recruiting across the whole property. So yeah, this area in particular, it was an action of injecting, was mainly camphor injection. There was also a bit of lantana. You can see it starting to come back as it does in everywhere. You probably all know what it's like. For us, the important thing now is to keep going and move on. So once you start an area, and it's a really good point to keep in mind, once you open up an area to do some management activities, you then have to manage it moving forwards. If we don't touch any of this again for another 7 years, it's going to look exactly like that again. So in the surrounding landscape, there's a whole heap of lantana, camphor laurel. The neighbouring property's got stacks of big mature camphor laurels. So the seed source is here for that recruitment just to keep happening. We'd love to burn some of these areas. We think that cool fire is going to be a really great way to manage some of these areas, promote the recruitment of the native ground covers, especially in these drier sort of veg communities. So that's something that we want to do at the moment. We have to go through here and spot spray out all the camphor laurel, the lantana and that sort of stuff. It's something that we'd like to certainly reduce the amount of chemical that we apply to the property. And we see hopefully cultural fire, but if not, just cool burning as a good management tool moving forwards. This is actually one of our very first projects on the property. So when it came to prioritising what we wanted to do on the property, one of the most important things was to protect all the wetland areas. So we got 2.5 kilometres of Emigrant Creek frontage, and we got these two really ecologically valuable wetland areas. Cattle had unrestricted access to the entire property. And so this was all just giant paspalum all the way down into there, and then the whole wetland area was full of like 30, 40 centimetre deep pug holes the whole way through. There was always no evidence of native species in there. So one of the first things we did was put this fence up, and the whole wetland area pretty much fixed itself. As soon as we removed the pressure of the cows and the grazing through there, we got the recruitment of all the native species, all the grasses and the reeds and the sedges all came back on their own. This is all planting, or mostly planting along the edge here. But yeah, it's really nice when it comes to prioritising what you want to do on your property, fixing those or just removing the pressure of those really sensitive parts of the property can actually have a massive impact without you actually having to do too much effort. So yeah, when it comes to thinking about what you want to do, maybe have a think about those things that you can achieve without having to actually put too much effort in, but get really awesome results. I don't know if you want to add any more to that.
Well, the only thing, just to continue, but basically just expand on what you just said, is we often get focused on planting because it's what we do, or we think it's the most important thing. But yeah, like Ben just explained, like the resources and the money that you didn't need to spend, just doing that has a much bigger result. So always think before you're gonna plant, why do you need to plant? I suppose is just to remember that and keep that in mind.
Yeah. Trees and shrubs is all we've planted. We haven't put all the native ground covers have come back on their own. All the ferns and everything's that's just recruitment. A lot of areas where we've sprayed out all the exotic ground covers, so all the exotic grasses we've sprayed out, we get recruitment of natives back, generally speaking. Obviously weeds as well, but yeah, we do get good recruitment of ground covers.
Like Ben also mentioned before, that once you've started somewhere, you've got to maintain it. The optimal way, which can be difficult, but if the vegetation condition is nearly good enough that you can go in and do what we call the primary work, like do the first run and then almost require no maintenance, that's ideal because then you can move on. So the more degraded it is, the more maintenance you're going to need to do, but there's a few little tips and just thinking about that with the grasses. One is, so there's a lot of the paspalum, the broadleaf paspalum through here. So that seeds once a year, late summer normally. So there's no point spraying it all when it's in full seed, because all it's going to do is create the perfect conditions, drop the seed and it's going to come back. If you spray it just before it seeds, so just starting to form, usually the seed's not viable for 12 months. So you spray it once and it's gone completely from the site. So again, always just try and think about the ecology of the weed. When's the best time for me to do something so I don't have to do as much work?
So this gully used to be completely full of lantana, and we spent a bit of time, but we cleared lantana out of there, and there's a nice little creek that runs down. So for us, we did it once, and it's pretty much stayed like that. So it's one of those areas where you can put a bit of effort in, and it doesn't require anywhere near as much follow-up. So we've got a pretty well established canopy. There's not as much light. The species that are there are mostly native. So if you've got areas like that where you can have a big win, and then it'll stay as a win without too much input, then it's probably worth doing it because it's very, very satisfying. And so when we talk about, it's really nice to celebrate successes when you do this. Like, we do it on a pretty big scale. So it'd be pretty easy for us to get overwhelmed and complain about how many weeds there are and be really stressed about it. But having areas like this where we put in a bit of effort and it's stayed like that, it's actually really rewarding, and it's nice to be able to celebrate that kind of thing. And on your own property, just acknowledging that you've actually had a win and it's stayed a win, I think that's pretty important. So yeah, this is one of those areas. We've got a few areas around the place that we like, but in terms of an established canopy where we've sort of treated the understory and it's remained, once again, you can see on the hill in here, it used to be all broadleaf paspalum. It's now completely native ground covers. So this little area, yeah, it's a nice spot, and for us, it's very rewarding to see it still being in that condition. So I recommend everyone celebrate your success because it's a good feeling.